Britain is facing a moment of reckoning. Once described as a symbol of stability, rule of law, and democratic balance, the United Kingdom today is witnessing scenes that many never imagined they would see in their lifetime. Riots, street clashes, overwhelmed police forces, political paralysis, and a growing sense that the social contract is fraying. From Northern England to Northern Ireland, from London streets to migrant housing facilities, anger is boiling over. Protesters are clashing with counter-protesters. Police vehicles are being set ablaze. Fireworks are being launched at officers. Entire neighborhoods report living in fear. And at the center of this storm lies a toxic mix of prison overcrowding, early prisoner releases, immigration pressures, economic stress, and a deep collapse of public trust in political leadership. Tonight, we break down what is really happening in the UK, beyond the headlines, beyond political spin, and ask a difficult question. Is Britain losing control, or is it simply being told not to look? The prison crisis that ignited the fire. The spark for much of the current outrage begins inside Britain's prisons. UK prisons have been operating beyond capacity for years. Cells designed for one inmate often hold 2 or 3. Staff shortages, crumbling infrastructure, and budget constraints have pushed the system to a breaking point. Under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the government approved an early release framework aimed at easing overcrowding. Officials insist the move was necessary, temporary, and carefully managed. But critics say the optics and consequences have been disastrous. Opposition figures and independent commentators claim tens of thousands of offenders are being released early, including individuals with histories of violence. Whether or not the highest figures are accurate, public perception has already hardened. People believe dangerous criminals are returning to the streets. This perception, true or exaggerated, has real consequences. Public confidence in safety collapses not when crime rises alone, but when people believe the state can no longer protect them. Controversial releases and public fury. Anger intensified after reports circulated about specific individuals allegedly released despite extremist rhetoric or prior violent convictions. One such case, repeatedly cited by critics, involves a migrant previously imprisoned more than once, who was later seen in images posing with weapons and making incendiary statements online. The government has not publicly confirmed all claims surrounding the case, but the damage was already done. In an era of social media, one viral story can outweigh 100 official denials. For many citizens, this became symbolic, not just about one individual, but about what they perceive as a system that is too lenient, too slow, and too disconnected from everyday fear. From anger to the streets. Soon, frustration moved from online spaces to physical streets. Protests erupted across several UK cities. What began as demonstrations quickly escalated into confrontations between protesters, counter-protesters, and police. In some areas, police cordons were breached, fireworks were launched directly at officers, police vehicles were damaged or destroyed, shops were looted or barricaded. Northern Ireland saw particularly intense scenes, reviving painful memories of past unrest. Authorities described these incidents as isolated and manageable. Protest organizers claimed they were peaceful until provoked. Critics argue the truth lies somewhere in between, but the images speak for themselves. Once crowds lose fear of authority, regaining control becomes exponentially harder. Far right, a label or oversimplification? A major point of contention is how protesters are being described. Government officials and major media outlets have often labeled the unrest as being driven by far-right groups. While organized extremist elements do exist, critics argue this framing oversimplifies a more complex reality. Among the crowds are working-class residents, pensioners worried about benefits, parents afraid for neighborhood safety,
small business owners angry over economic pressure. Labeling all dissent as extremism risks alienating people who may not share radical ideology but feel unheard. When governments reduce social anger to a single label, dialogue collapses and polarization deepens. Immigration, hotels, and economic anger. At the heart of the unrest is the issue that dominates nearly every political debate in Britain today: immigration. The UK continues to house thousands of asylum seekers in hotels at enormous daily cost. Government figures acknowledge the expense, while critics cite estimates running into millions of pounds per day. This becomes politically explosive when combined with cuts to welfare benefits, rising living costs, energy bills, pension disputes, including winter fuel payments. For struggling citizens, the optics are devastating. We are told there is no money for us, but unlimited money for others. Whether fair or not, this belief fuels resentment, and resentment fuels unrest. Police under pressure. UK police forces are stretched thin. Officers face public hostility, political scrutiny, staff shortages, fear of disciplinary action for decisive force. In riot situations, hesitation can be fatal, but excess force risks public backlash. Police leaders warn morale is dropping, recruitment struggles continue, and frontline officers increasingly feel abandoned by both politicians and the public. A society where police authority erodes enters dangerous territory. Media, information, and trust collapse. Another explosive accusation gaining traction is information suppression. Some commentators claim live feeds were cut during peak unrest. Others allege selective reporting that minimizes violence while amplifying political messaging. Whether deliberate or not, perception matters more than intent. When people believe they are being lied to, they turn to alternative sources, not all of them reliable. This creates an information vacuum filled with rumors, exaggerations, and rage. Government response: control or denial. Prime Minister Starmer maintains the situation is under control and places blame on systemic failures inherited from previous governments. Plans for new prison capacity and long-term reform have been announced, but critics argue these solutions are years away, while the crisis is now. Leadership is not just about policy, it is about moral authority, and many now question whether that authority still exists. The deportation debate and legal loopholes. One of the most explosive claims emerging from Britain's unrest is that the deportation system is effectively broken. According to legal insiders and leaked court commentary quoted by critics, only a small percentage of foreign offenders are actually deported after committing crimes. Appeals can stretch for years. Human rights laws, asylum protections, and international conventions often block removal. Judges, immigration lawyers, and activists argue these protections are necessary to prevent wrongful deportation. Critics argue the system has been weaponized. Among the most controversial allegations, criminals claiming religious conversion after conviction, sexual orientation claims emerging late in appeals processes, deportation delays caused by lack of documentation or uncooperative origin countries. An anonymous London judge was quoted in commentary saying the system had become too tolerant, not out of compassion, but paralysis. Whether or not every claim is accurate, public belief is clear. People feel the rules no longer apply equally, and when equality before the law is questioned, legitimacy collapses. Rising crime and daily fear. Beyond protests and politics lies something more personal: daily fear. Residents across major UK cities report phone snatching becoming routine, knife crime involving teenagers, machete attacks reported in northern towns, women afraid to travel alone at night. In London alone, critics cite figures claiming a phone is stolen every few minutes. Police acknowledge theft has risen sharply, even as resources struggle to keep up. Crime statistics are debated endlessly, but perception, again, matters. A society does not unravel when crime rises. It unravels when people believe crime has become normal. Northern Ireland, a dangerous flashpoint. Northern Ireland deserves special attention. What happens there is never just local. Recent unrest in parts of Northern Ireland saw police vehicles set on fire, sustained attacks using fireworks and petrol bombs, crowds overwhelming security lines. For a region with a long memory of sectarian violence, these images were chilling. Community leaders warned that anger over migration, policing, and identity was intersecting with old grievances. The fear is not just disorder, it is history repeating itself. The economic pressure cooker. No unrest exists in a vacuum.